One way that autism affects me is that I tend to communicate differently than most other people. Now, in these videos, it might seem like there's not many differences in my communication, but to be honest, recording these videos is where I feel the most comfortable. There's not a dialogue, there's not another person looking at me, there's not someone I have to respond to. It's just me in my safe space with my camera. And I've been doing this for a long time, so I feel really comfortable with this. But out in the real world, communication can be really hard for me. I spent much of my life trying to figure out how to communicate. For a long time in my teenage years, I studied psychology, I studied human behavior, I tried to figure out how conversations worked. I would watch movies and podcasts and YouTube videos with the sole purpose of understanding how to have a conversation. It never came natural to me. When communicating, I tend to be very direct and very clear. I say exactly what I mean. And what I find is that most people don't communicate like that. A lot of times people communicate in a much more passive way, leaving a lot of things up for assumption or inference. And this is just really hard for me. People see my directness as being too harsh, and I see their indirectness as not making sense. I also have a really hard time with small talk and meaningless conversations. I would much rather talk about something that's interesting as opposed to conversing just to have a conversation. That doesn't make sense to me. That's boring. Along with all of this, I also have delayed processing. So if someone says something to me, it takes me a little bit to fully understand what they're saying. And sometimes it takes me later that night or even a week later. And so this means that in the moment, my responses aren't always as authentic as I wish they could be, just because I'm trying to process what they're saying. I often have a hard time coming up with the right words in the moment. And this can also be because usually I'm overstimulated. It's hard for me to make out what someone is saying when there's a lot of background noise or when there's a lot of sensory input in my environment. I also might avoid eye contact, or I might have a blank expression on my face. This doesn't mean that I'm not interested. It doesn't mean that I'm not listening. It doesn't mean that I'm trying to be rude. I'm already overwhelmed and I'm just trying to do my best to listen. That's all that means. There were also times when I was little where I wouldn't respond in conversations. When people would talk to me, I would just be completely silent. And now this doesn't happen as much, and I feel like I don't have as much social anxiety. But with all of these things, it also leads me to being hyper aware in social settings, which can be exhausting in itself.